Welcome to I-24 News. I'm Denise Wood, and we open this hour with breaking news. British police have confirmed that 19 people have been killed and at least 50 injured in an explosion at Manchester Arena, where an Ariana Grande concert was taking place on Monday night. We were just hearing from the police of the Greater Manchester Department, again saying that the death toll has now risen to 22 in this tragic attack at an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester. Again, we also heard the police commissioner saying that children are among the dead. Now we return to our guest, Joel Goodman. He's a photographer who is live at the scene. Joel, thanks for your patience. Again, if you could just describe the scene that you were seeing last night when you arrived, as we heard the police commissioner saying there are children among the dead. Was it a very young crowd when you were there? What was it like seeing all of these families, these children fleeing the scene? Matthew, thanks so much for that explanation. Now, we're going to come back and talk more about Iran, but first we want to listen to some comments that we heard by the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, who argued today that U.S. President Trump could leave the Iran nuclear deal despite Iran's technical compliance. While she didn't necessarily advocate a withdrawal, she did criticize the deal, saying it's flawed. To discuss this all further, I'm now joined by Matthew R.J. Brodsky, a senior fellow at the Security Studies Group. Matthew, thanks so much for being with us.
Good to be with you.
So a couple things to talk about. Let's start, though, with these comments that we heard from the Egyptian president wanting peace between Israel and the Palestinians. Do we see Egypt really emerging as a leader in this push for a regional peace initiative? Known as some of the staunchest opponents of the so-called Islamic State, the Kurds use music to motivate their troops in the battlefield while waging war against the group. It turns out their musical efforts are not only motivating them to defeat the radical Islamist group, they're also strengthening the Kurdish national identity. Our culture correspondent Daniel Campos with the story. Now to the U.S., where the Midwest was battered by severe weather with tornadoes hitting Minnesota and parts of Iowa. And in other news, after a whirlwind trip to Israel and the West Bank today, Britain's Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson is saying the United Kingdom is more committed than ever to a two-state solution. We continue our discussion of U.S. President Donald Trump's visit to the West Bank, where he's meeting right now with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in the city of Bethlehem. We now cross to our diplomatic correspondent, Ellie Ochenberg, who is live from Israel's parliament in Jerusalem. Ellie, thanks for being with us. What are you hearing today at Israel's parliament? Have lawmakers been giving reactions ahead of President Trump's anticipated speech? Our panel with Mohammed Al-Qasim, Ariel Levin-Waldman, and Owen Alterman. Again, thank you for being here. So we're all smiling after seeing that clip, a very fun exchange between Netanyahu and Johnson. But also it is interesting to watch Netanyahu's reactions to some of the things that we saw Johnson saying, things that Israel might not have wanted to hear, this continued push for a two-state solution. And the fact that Britain might get involved with it again. Yesterday, a parking garage collapsed, killing at least 3 people and trapping dozens. The collapse originally occurred when a crane fell on the 4-story parking garage, collapsing all 4 stories into the ground. Here in this neighborhood where we are now, it was one of the worst hit during the fires which swept through Haifa, forcing around 60,000 residents to evacuate. When they returned, many of their houses were scorched beyond recognition and uninhabitable. It's estimated that around 1,600 people remain homeless. Now, I saw on this street earlier today residents coming to try to salvage things from their houses that had remained from the fires to keep them from being destroyed by the rain. They say that this is a very serious concern. Many of the roofs were burned through by the fires. That's right. I'm joined by Shalev Julio, a commander in the IDF Search and Rescue Unit, to hear more about the situation on the ground. Shalev, so can you tell us, what have you been seeing here on the ground? What happened yesterday?